Ah, the Great Wall of China, built to keep hordes of monsters out of the empire. Well, okay, not actual monsters, but hordes. Hordes of northern tribes from the area that is now Mongolia and Russia. At the time when the first walls were built during the Warring States period and then joined together in the Qin dynasty around 200 BC, these tribes were called Xiongnu, and they inhabited this area north of the Chinese Empire, and they actually served a serious threat. The fact that they were on horseback meant that they could quickly enter and raid Chinese towns and villages and then escape and set up camp in a different place each time to avoid capture. Later, there were also the Jurchens, the Mongolians, and the Manchurians, who were descendants of these tribes, threatening China from the north. And then there was David Copperfield. So did the Great Wall actually work? Well, it didn't stop David, but did it stop those hordes of barbarians from attacking from the north and breaking into China? Well, actually, no. Or yes and no, but at really crucial times, no. In this video, we are going to explain it all. We will answer the question, did the Great Wall actually stop China's enemies? So although there were walls existing since the Warring States period and perhaps even dating back to the Shang dynasty, we think of the Great Wall, or Wanli Changcheng, as being something built by the first emperor of the Qin dynasty who unified all of the warring states. Ancient Chinese historical book, the Shi Ji, states, after all under heaven was unified by the Qin, General Meng Tian was sent north with 300,000 men to chase away the Rong and Di, which were tribes in the north. He took the territory south of the Yellow River from them. He built a long wall according to the topography of the land. It started in Lintao and ended in Liaodong, a distance of over 10,000 li. The troops were there for over 10 years living in the region. Meng Tian left the Xiongnu in awe. So although it talks about him creating a 10,000 li long wall, and 1 li, by the way, is a third of a mile, so it's really about a 3,000 mile long wall, he actually did it by connecting many sections of existing walls that had been built by the warring states. Still a massive job, since he had to rebuild them and build extra sections in between. The walls back then were a lot different to what you see now though, which is mostly from the Ming dynasty and has been heavily restored. Those early walls from the Warring States period, the Qin and Han dynasties, were made of stones or rammed earth, and not much of them survives today. These walls were one way that Chinese emperors dealt with the threat from those northern nomadic tribes. As the Qin dynasty fell apart, Liu Bang emerged victorious and founded the Han dynasty. And they still had the problem of the northern nomads raiding Chinese territory. They first tried strategies like marriage between tribal chiefs and Chinese princesses known as heqin. They tried paying them, and they tried giving them gifts of silk and grain. But wall building was always an option that they came back to, and certain dynasties did it more than others. The Qin, Han, Sui, and Ming dynasties were particularly into using walls to protect their northern borders. So did these walls work? Well, they probably did stop many smaller incursions into Chinese civilization, but there have been several times throughout history where the Great Wall has done nothing to stop an invading army, and even a couple of times where an invasion crossing the Great Wall led to the fall of an entire dynasty. During the Han dynasty, the Great Wall and defensive forts were expanded west through the desert. But by the end of the dynasty, maintaining territory had become a big expense, and some of the frontier areas that were once Chinese territory had actually been abandoned and ceded to the Xiongnu, leaving sections of wall outside of the Chinese Empire. As time went on, borders were redrawn and fortifications were rebuilt. Like we saw in the Shi Ji, the walls were built according to the topography of the land. Mountainous areas provided natural barriers anyway, but natural routes through the mountains became key choke points where fortresses could be built in the wall system to fend off invaders. One of those places was Yanmen Pass, or Yanmen Guan, where a huge fortress was built in the wall system in 557 AD. During the Song dynasty, China faced a constant threat from the north, and in the year 980, Yanmen Pass became the scene of an epic battle. General Yang Ye defended Yanmen Pass against a 100,000 strong invading army from the Liao Khitan to the north, with only a few thousand men. Since they were stationed on the Great Wall, they were able to use the tactic of sneaking Chinese cavalry into Liao territory, further along the wall, and then coming around behind the invading army for a surprise attack, trapping them between the Chinese troops and the Great Wall. The Song dynasty won that encounter and the attacking army retreated. So that was a successful example of defending the Great Wall from an invading army. But there are some unsuccessful ones too. When the Mongolians invaded China in the 13th century, there was a major offensive at Juyong Pass or Juyongguan. This is a major choke point between two mountains. And what is that? In modern China, they've built a highway through the Great Wall. I guess World Heritage Site means nothing. Just knock a hole in it and build a road. When Genghis Khan decided to invade the Jin dynasty, which ruled northern China at the time, with the Song dynasty pushed south, the Jin had prepared to defend the Great Wall with around 1 million soldiers. But they were spread out over the entire length of the wall, with no one place having significant forces protecting it. Genghis Khan sent out scouts to identify weak points in the wall and places where they could just walk around, since the Great Wall was never 100% continuous. They managed to do this in a few places and were able to destroy some of the Jin army's fortresses and camps. One of these battles was the Battle of Wild Fox Ridge, Yehuling Zhizhan. Then one group of troops went south and came at Beijing from the southwest, and another advanced to Juyongguan, Juyong Pass, northwest of Beijing. Jinyong Pass was one of 3 inner passes, or Neisanguan, on the inner section of the Great Wall closest to the capital. The Mongol general Zhibie lured defendants out of their fortifications at Juyong Pass and then cleverly used his forces to circle the Jin army and ran through the open gates of the pass. They then conquered all of China. Later, in the Yuan dynasty, which was the name the Mongols adopted when they ruled China, Emperor Yuan Huizong built this cloud platform, or Yuntai, at Jinyong Pass. So we have one instance of success and one instance of failure. But there is another very famous instance where the Great Wall totally failed to stop an invading army and led to a new dynasty taking over China. At the end of the Ming dynasty in 1644, China was taken over by Li Zicheng and his rebel army. It's what you did at the end of a dynasty. As the country falls apart, rebels rise up hoping to become the emperor of a new dynasty, where they then suddenly become legitimate and are no longer rebel scum.
You rebel scum.
But Li Zicheng never made it that far, because from the north came another army who had the intention of conquering all of China, the Manchus. These were a non-Chinese people from beyond the Great Wall. Their men loved wearing their hair in these ponytail plaits, and so if you watch any kung fu movie set in the late 1800s or early 1900s, you'll see guys with ponytails called queues, or bianzi in Chinese, which refers to any kind of plait. And that is because when the Manchus conquered China, they made it law that all men must wear their hair in that style or face execution for treason. So every man in China had the same hairstyle. Going to the barber shop would have been easy too. You wouldn't even have to communicate what you wanted. The barber wouldn't do it for you anyway, since he'd be conspiring with you to commit treason if he gave you any other haircut. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. In order for the Manchus to invade China and establish the Qing dynasty and force everyone to have their haircut, they needed to get through the Great Wall. And this is where it gets interesting. So when Li Zicheng and his rebels marched on Beijing, the Ming dynasty general Wu Sangui, who led 40,000 troops, was tasked with defeating Li. Now, his troops were in a portion of Chinese territory beyond the Great Wall to the north. He started marching back into China towards Beijing. His army's route is the red line on this map. But after receiving word of the emperor's suicide, he stopped at a place called Shanhaiguan, or Shanhai Pass, on the far eastern end of the Great Wall, a little under 200 miles from Beijing. His forces were now sandwiched in between Li Zicheng to the southwest and the Manchus in the northeast. Both groups wanted control of all of China. Wu Sangui at first still held on to hope that the Ming dynasty could survive, but he knew he had to defeat Li. After all, Li was holding his father and his concubine, Chen Yuanyuan, hostage in Beijing. Things were now getting personal. He wrote to the Manchus proposing a partnership where they would join forces and defeat Li, and in exchange the Manchus could have some expanded territory in the northeast, north of the Great Wall, whilst letting the Ming survive to the south. But look, this was the guy he was writing to, Prince Dorgan. Does that look like the kind of guy who would want to compromise to you? No, it certainly does not. He would only do it if Wu submitted to him and let him rule over all of China. Wu didn't agree at first, but then Li started sending out armies to attack him at Shanhai Pass on the Great Wall. After Li's forces were defeated a couple of times, he eventually sent out 60,000 soldiers and defeated Wu's army. Wu then wrote a letter to everyone's favorite Manchu prince, Dorgan, asking for help, and Dorgan basically told him that he would only do it if Wu surrendered. So Wu did, and he opened up the gates to the Great Wall at Shanhai Pass and let the Manchus in. The Manchus joined forces with what was left of Wu Sangui's army, and together they defeated Li Zicheng and marched on Beijing. They installed the Shunzhi Emperor in Beijing, and they then went on to march on the rest of China. For his remaining years, Dorgan maintained much of the power behind the throne as regent. But this started the Qing dynasty, which, despite technically being foreign rule because it was the Manchus, actually let China flourish, with great emperors like Qianlong and Kangxi following in a final golden age in Chinese history. Only drawback was that there was only one choice of hairstyle, and if it accidentally got cut off in a kung fu fight, you could be executed. So, just one minor negative point there. So in that instance, although the Great Wall was defended, in the end it was human action that allowed enemy forces to cross the wall. Wu Sangui just opened the doors. In this video, we have shown you multiple ways that the Great Wall has been breached by major armies. You can just go around the side of it, since it wasn't actually continuous. You can attack a poorly defended part of it, since soldiers were often spread thinly along the wall. Or you can just walk straight through open doors in the wall through trickery or just making a deal with whoever was guarding the wall to defect. I think in daily life, the Great Wall did probably stop a lot of barbarian raids, and it also stopped Chinese people from getting out of China and creating connection with the tribes in the north. That was a big part of it too that many researchers talk about, but isn't really emphasized in a lot of books and documentaries on the Great Wall. But when it came to really big battles, the Great Wall was not an insurmountable obstacle. It just required additional planning, strategies, and maybe a few magic tricks to get an army across it. No doubt it did add difficulty, but when the tide of history was ready to turn and the previous dynasty had lost the mandate of heaven, that wall did not stop the next emperor and his army taking power. Yet it remains one of the greatest historical achievements of mankind and one of the greatest symbols of the majesty of Chinese civilization. Thanks for watching, guys. Let us know what you think in the comments. And if you're into traditional Chinese culture, why not check out Shenyun Performing Arts, my recommended theatrical performance of traditional Chinese culture. It includes myths and legends from Chinese history and famous Chinese characters like the Monkey King. Shenyun is about to embark on their 2025 world tour and may be coming to a city near you. If you're interested, do click the link below to watch the trailer, and if you do go on to buy tickets, you can get a waived booking fee with our code LCN2025. It's a show I personally recommend, so do check it out. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new, leave your comments about future videos you would like to see. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.